Happy Thanksgiving, or as we call it in Canada, Thursday.
Exactly. And what I'm calling it.
How long did it take you to buy into American Thanksgiving being a Canuck?
I wear spandex for a living, so it's never going to be a big deal to me, and I'm 51. So, like 4K, 5K, spandex, 51, all of those things are working against me. So, there's not a lot of gravy ingested today for me.
Yeah. You got to be, it's high risk these kind of days. I always
Yes.
remember that playing, right? I have a game the next day and I'm like, okay, how do I monitor my intake here? Because I know I'm going to, pig out. And last night, obviously the night before Thanksgiving, I don't think the boys went out drinking like most Americans do, but it was a tough loss. And were you bothered by the game last night? The injuries, what's your takeaway?
Gosh, the injuries this season already, it's like, I mean, the fact that they've been able to do what they've done with kind of with an AHL roster, more or less, you got 7 guys down forwards like that. They already need another center anyway, and then you take away so many of those players. I miss a guy like Pacioretty because I feel like last night that's the kind of game that he steps through people. The way he hits people, like I've obviously seen him before, but I never really paid attention to his game until this season. And then just to see the reaction when he hits guys, how they just wither because he hits them in the sternum or right in the middle of the chest and goes through them. Man, you miss a guy like that in a game like last night. But I'm also hey, you can't be that bothered by it, by the fact that they had so many out. I do think Florida took the opportunity to kind of flex and say, no, we're still Stanley Cup champs. It still goes through Sunrise before you get to the finals, kind of thing. But if I'm the Leafs, I'm also not totally concerned about it, just because with a full core, who knows what happens. I think it's a far different game.
Always careful with silver linings and consolation prizes in this market, but I mentioned a bit earlier before you came on, to go 7-2 without Austin Matthews, pretty damn good in my world.
Yeah, let alone, like I said, Pacioretty or Matthew Nyes or any number of these guys that are contributors. Thankfully, and knock on wood, I don't want to jinx it, but so far the D has remained solid, and I think that's why they're 7-2. Sure, Tavares has been playing out of his head, so is Marner. I also love the fact that like nobody's talking about trading Marner now. Funny, interesting. All summer, Marner. Oh, okay, really? Yeah, because imagine that team without him right now.
I know. I always think that, honestly, I always think that about Marner, where like, imagine Marner played on another team and we were sitting here in Leafland being like, oh man, imagine we had Marner in our team and we have him and we're trying to get rid of him. Right. So I know we haven't had a good year, like in a while when it comes to goaltending, right? Now having 2 guys, depth, obviously I'm the goalie guy. This is my thing. I played in the league for a long time, never really on the Leafs, but the sense of the matter is like, what do you take away from their goaltending situation right now, Adam?
This is the first season, I think, since Belfour where I don't get nervous when it goes into the Leafs end. There was always like some trepidation, like, oh man, like Anderson, Samsonov, like when it would go in that end, I'd go, oh gosh, okay. Now a lot of that had to do with the D, sure. And I think, the way the guys are playing and the way McCabe and Tanev are shutting people down, and then you got Ekman Larson and Riley, like that's some solid defense that I don't feel like those goalies had that they had at their disposal in front of them. The block shots of, shot through the roof. Obviously that's why you get a guy like Tanev, but it just to a man, everybody I think has been playing really, really well defensively. And that goes to the forwards too. I think that makes a big difference in how we're looking at the goalies and the type of seasons they're having. But I also think they're both studs. It's like the Twin Towers back there. You got, Wool's like what, 6'4", Stolarz is what, 6'6", but they can both move. And they play differently too. Like I feel like Wool is much more calm, and you can tell me because you know better than I do, but it feels like Stolarz is fighting, man. Like he's always battling. Just 2 different types of players, but if either one of them are in the net, I feel pretty good.
I definitely think it's a good problem to have when you have two competent goaltenders. Dennis Hildeby, I know he played a couple games, I think was a really good story. But I think it goes without saying, Kopi, like the black and blue Maple Leafs is like perfect for a guy like you, considering what you do for a living, how many licks you take and wounds on a daily basis. Like I've really enjoyed this team the way they've played this season. I know they're not scoring, they're not as flashy. Have you?
Yeah, I have. You know, it's much more fun to watch winning than losing or 500 or whatever it is. Now they usually have good Novembers, but
True.
it feels different. It really does. And I know it's like you say that every season, but this time it truly does. And it truly does because of the goaltending and because of the D. That to me is what is different and the system they're playing. And I was talking to my buddy Mike. I was like, I don't think we're gonna see Matthews get 60 this year. This is before the start of the season. And I was like, and I don't see guys getting maybe the numbers that they normally get, but I see the team doing better in the playoffs. So if that's the trade-off, then I think it's a good thing if you're looking at it from as a team, which I'd like to think all of them are. Um, but I assumed it would like maybe they stay 500 until mid-season kind of thing, and then they all get on board and understand what it is that Berube is trying to do. But it seems to have happened far quicker than that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's I totally agree. You know what, I before the season started, I kind of thought of when Barry Trotz went to Washington, right? And the Capitals
Yeah,
were all offense. And then he just got them to understand, like, if you want to win, you have to do this. And I think it takes time. And I think Craig Berube's done a good job. Now, but for me, obviously, the elephant in the room with Marner contract, Tavares re-signing, are these guys you keep or walk? You know, I know there's a lot to take in. Like, what's your take on those two?
I mean, I think if you don't if you watch Marner and still decide that he needs to be I don't know, man. Like it just, I know the playoffs and all of those things, and I think you maybe wait until you see what happens in the playoff this year, and then you can make a better, more well informed decision. I love Tavares. I often just watch him and watch his hustle and how he grinds and digs it out of the corners, uses his body to keep distance. Like he would be a nightmare to play. He really, really would. And I like that a guy on our team is the nightmare to play. He doesn't stop, man. I mean, he got knocked on his ass and still gets a shot off last night. And he got hit. Like they didn't mention the fact that he got rocked, yet oh, I'm on my ass, I'll still shoot it. Like I love that kind of guy. And I feel like, align with him and Pacioretty, you can talk about foot speed and all of those things, but what they bring to the table in spite of, maybe a lack of foot speed at this stage, I think is it's huge. I like that being said, man, I don't know. I don't know about contracts and what to sign for or any of those things. I think Tavares is the kind of guy, though, if giving up the captaincy this summer is any indication, it's he would take less, even though the guy's still producing. Like, take him away from Toronto and imagine what he would still get paid.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, there's so many questions surrounding this team, and I do tend to agree with you. I think you kick the can down the road and you wait to make those decisions. Adam, as you know, we're live here on YouTube. We got some questions in the chat. Leaping Lanny Poffo asks, ask him
Of
who
course.
his favorite Leaf is, and all the world stage. Ask who's your favorite hockey player of all time.
Wow. Wow. Ah, gosh. Probably my favorite Leaf of all time is Wendell. We'll show him up there. There he is. There
Love
he
it.
is. Um, and I got to meet him last year at the All-Star game, right
Yeah.
after I met Gretzky for the first time. So it was a good night. It was a good night. I mean, I love the way Gretzky played. I love the way he conducted himself, continues to conduct himself. I love Joe Sakic and the way he always conducted himself and yet produced, but he did it quietly. That's what I always appreciated. A guy like Yzerman, um, guy like Jean Beliveau, it really more in how they conducted themselves. But then you give me a guy like Wendell, who just felt like he'd fight anybody for the crest on his chest. That's pretty awesome. I also love Martin Brodeur. I've always been a massive fan of Marty, which is why I've also been a fan of the Devils all these years too. So it's tough to narrow down to just one, but if like you're twisting my arm, I'm going to go with Wendell.
Yeah, you're lighting up all the bells for me. I got to meet Wendel Clark last year here at a charity event. What a guy. And again, he's a guy that, like, when he wore the jersey, I know what you mean, right? There's just certain players that, like, it's like they're going to bleed. They're going to do anything for their team. And, I guess for me, looking on the outside, right, I've been in a lot of NHL locker rooms, right? Spent 10 years in the league. Like, after the game, there's the Player of the Game award, right? And it's the belt that you gifted this team. Like, how much does that mean to you? Because I've been, like, I know what it's like to win that, right? Because you wear it for your team, and obviously something pretty cool from the outside looking in.
Yeah, man. Like I met Morgan. He had come to a show at the ACC, and so I gave him the belt just as a hey, whatever you guys want to do with this. Hell, if you just want to put it up in your basement, but it's yours. I had three of them made, one for me, one for my buddy, and one for the Leafs. So when I saw what they were doing with it, and I mean, it's as a kid who grew up watching the Leafs, right? And some of my very first memories are watching the Leafs with my uncles, who were all goalies too. So they were batshit. But but it was it's great to see, to even have a little small part of what they do is just super fun, man.
I think it's awesome. Leaving with this one, sticking with the injury theme again, I thought you were a perfect guest for today's show. You're working your way back from a fractured tibia you sustained last May, diving off the top of a steel cage. How are you feeling, man? And when can we expect you back in the ring?
And
I
I'm
feel
back
good.
shit.
I can say that because I am too. Yeah, my brain forgets I'm 51. But my body quickly reminded me, yeah, you just jumped from 21 feet, asshole. Like that's technically 3 stories. You're 51, quit it. But I feel good. I'm ready to get back at it and to get busy again. I think everybody here is sick of me and sick of like, hey, you gonna come down and watch the Leafs game? Come on, girls, they're playing the Panthers tonight. You gotta watch this one. Like, I think they're ready for me to go. Okay, Dad, great, cool, awesome. When you going back to work, by the way?
We're looking forward to it, man. It's always great to touch base a couple times here, get your thoughts on the Maple Leafs. A bunch of people in the chat suggest you should be a regular. You know more than we do about the Leafs, so we appreciate your time today, man.
Well, thanks for having me, man. If it's one thing I can do, it's talk about the Leafs.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosa. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.